Hi, my name is Faris Ashraf. Now I'm going to present about the IJM Plantation Berhad background. IJM Plantation Berhad is an upstream agribusiness company involved in oil palm plantation. The history of the group dates back to its humble beginnings in 1985 when it first ventured into a land bank of 4,000 hectares in the Satalisai estates in Sabah, Malaysia. The group has 6 palm oil mills with a total FFB processing capacity of 300 metric ton of FFB per hour, which are strategically located in close proximity to its plantations. The 4 palm oil mills in the Malaysian operations combine a total processing capacity of 180 metric ton of FFB per hour. The remaining 2 mills are located in the Indonesian operation and have a capacity of 120 metric ton of FFB per hour. The group is committed to uphold the highest standards of performance in its plantation, to remain focused on productivity and innovations, and care for environments, its people and surrounding communities to enable the group to achieve its vision and to realize a balanced mix between growth and sustainability.
SIMEDARBY Plantation SDP was established in 2007 as the plantation and agri-business arm of the SIMEDARBY Group, which represent one of the 5 core divisions of the group. After more than a decade, SDP has shown its ranking become strong to not only be a fully integrated global plantation company, but also the world's largest producer of certified sustainable palm oil (CSPO). However, impact from the demerger of the SIMEDARBY Group in 2017 and SDP got listed on the Kuala Lumpur Stock Exchange on 13 November 2017. Despite from that, SDP started its journey nowadays as an independent, pure-play entity. Besides that, in 2019, SDP was the first company who commercially harvested genome select GM with a 20% yield and completed the divestment of PT Mitra Autral Sejahtera PT Mas. Then, SDP published the genome map on the public domain to further the research of others in the plantation sector. Other than that, SDP also completes the divestment of SIMEDARBY Plantation Liberia.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh to Encik NORIZAN bin Said, Lecturer of Financial Management PFM 3023. My name is NORIZAN bin Nazir with number metric D202010935331. I'm going to present about financial performance between IJM Plantations Berhad and SIMEDARBY Plantation during 2019. For question 1, how liquid is your organization? A liquid asset is the one that can be converted quickly and routinely into cash at the current market price. Based on the current ratio, SIMEDARBY Plantation is slightly less liquid than IJM Plantations Berhad. SIMEDARBY Plantation has only RM1.40 in current assets for every RM1 in current liabilities, compared to IJM Plantations Berhad, which is RM1.56. Next, both companies seems like they are facing trouble in paying their current debt, as SIMEDARBY Plantation only had 66 cents in quick asset for every RM1 in current liabilities, while IJM Plantations Berhad had only 48 cents. However, IJM Plantations Berhad has a little more liquid than SIMEDARBY Plantation in collecting its receivable, where the company requires 14.52 times to collect its receivable, while SIMEDARBY Plantation requires 5.77 times to collect its receivable, which means that the average income receivable are collected in 25.13 days and 63.22 days respectively. For inventory turnover ratios, SIMEDARBY Plantation seems to have an ideal ratio compared to IJM Plantations Berhad. This is because SIMEDARBY Plantation tends to turn over its inventory 7.59 times, which indicates that the company sell and restock their inventory every 1 to 2 months, while IJM Plantations Berhad tends to turn over its inventory 17.76 times, which can be a bad thing and hurt their balance sheet and affect business performance. Thus, IJM Plantation Berhad is barely less liquid than SIMEDARBY Plantation. Question 2. Are the managers generating an adequate operating profit on the organization's asset? One of the most important ways managers create shareholder value is to earn good profits on the assets in which they have invested. Based on operating return on asset, SIMEDARBY Plantation earned a significantly lower return on its asset than IJM Plantation's Berhad, where the company only managed to generate 1.41 cent of operating profit for every 1 ringgit of assets, which is much less than SIMEDARBY Plantation's 7.4 cent. Similarly to operating profit margin, where SIMEDARBY Plantation has earned a significantly lower ratio than IJM Plantation's Berhad. SIMEDARBY Plantation only earns 3.35% in operating profit margin, while IJM Plantation's Berhad earns 57.2%. The results clearly indicate that IJM Plantation's Berhad managers were good at managing its cost of goods sold and operating expense than SIMEDARBY Plantation managers. However, SIMEDARBY Plantation has higher total asset turnover ratio than IJM Plantation's Berhad because they are using their assets far more efficiently than IJM Plantation's Berhad. The company managed to generate 42 cents in sales for every 1 ringgit invested in assets, while IJM Plantation's Berhad only managed to generate 13 cents in sales for every 1 ringgit invested in assets. Lastly, for fixed asset turnover, SIMEDARBY Plantation also has higher ratio than IJM Plantation's Berhad, which is 70 cents in sales for every 1 ringgit invested in fixed asset, compared to IJM Plantation's Berhad, which is 13 cents. To conclude, SIMEDARBY Plantation's managers are utilizing the company's asset far more efficiently as based on the company's total asset turnover. Question 3. How is your organization financing its asset? SIMEDARBY Plantation financing 27.82% of its asset by debt, while IJM Plantation's Berhad financing 5.9% of its asset by debt. Thus, we can conclude that SIMEDARBY Plantation is riskier than IJM Plantation's Berhad, as their debt ratios is higher compared to IJM Plantation's Berhad. Question 4. Are the managers generating a good return on equity? The return on equity for both companies SIMEDARBY Plantation and IJM Plantation's Berhad are 0.92% and 13.8% respectively. Hence, SIMEDARBY Plantation are receiving a lower return on their equity investment compared to IJM Plantation's Berhad, where the company managed to generate a higher ratio in net income for every 1 ringgit of total common equity. This can be proved by analysis of SIMEDARBY Plantation receiving a lower return on asset, which only 1.41% compared to IJM Plantation's Berhad, which is 7.4%. In conclusion, a lower return on the company's asset will always result in a lower return on equity and vice versa. That's all from me, thank you.
So, now I'm going to present about the financial performance for year end 2020 for the above company. The first one, how liquid is your organization? We use two perspectives to measure this ratio. For the first perspective, we use the current ratio and the quick ratio. The slide shows the figures of both ratio. Liquid asset is the one that can be converted quickly and routinely into cash at the current market price. Based on the current ratio, SIMEDARBY Plantation is slightly less liquid than IJM Plantation Berhad. Both companies seems like they are facing trouble in paying their current debt. For the second perspective, we use the day in receivable, account receivable turnover, and inventory turnover ratio. The slide also show the figures of that all three ratios. IJM Plantation Berhad has a little more liquid than SIMEDARBY Plantation in collecting its receivables. For inventory turnover ratio, SIMEDARBY Plantation seems to have an ideal ratio. Lower inventory turnover ratio, the company sells and restock their inventory every 1 to 2 months. Higher inventory turnover ratio can be bad things and hurt balance sheet and affect business performance. Thus, IJM Plantation Berhad is very less liquid than SIMEDARBY Plantation. Are the managers generating an adequate operating profit on the organization's assets? So, to answer this question, we use two ratios to measure these figures, which is operating return on assets ratios and operating profit margin ratios. This slide shows the figures of the both ratios for the both company. One of the most important ways managers create shareholders' value is to earn good profits on the assets in which they have invested. Based on the ORA, IJM Plantation Berhad earned a significantly higher return on its assets than SIMEDARBY Plantation. Similar to operating profit margin, where IJM Plantation's Berhad has earned a significantly higher ratio than SIMEDARBY Plantation. IJM Plantation Berhad managers were good at managing its cost of goods sold and operating expenses than SIMEDARBY Plantation Berhad managers. Other than that, we also use the total asset turnover ratios and fixed asset turnover ratios to answer this question too. You can see at the slide the figures of the ratios for the both company. SIMEDARBY Plantation has higher total asset turnover ratios than IJM Plantation Berhad. They are using their assets far more efficiently than IJM Plantation Berhad. For fixed asset turnover, SIMEDARBY Plantation also has higher ratios than IJM Plantation Berhad. To conclude, SIMEDARBY Plantation's manager are utilizing the company's assets far more efficiently as based on the company's total assets turnover. Next, question 3. How is your organization financing its assets? To answer this question, we use the debt ratio for the above company to answer it. SIMEDARBY Plantation finance 24.26% of its assets by debt, while IJM Plantation Berhad financing 6.61% of its assets by debt. SIMEDARBY Plantation is riskier than IJM Plantation Berhad as their debt ratios is higher compared to IJM Plantation Berhad. Now is the last question. Are the managers generating a good return on equity? So to answer this question, we use the return on equity ratios for the above company. IJM Plantation Berhad are receiving a higher return on their equity investment compared to SIMEDARBY Plantation. IJM Plantation Berhad managed to generate higher ratio in net income for every RM1 of total common equity. This can be proved by analysis of IJM Plantation Berhad receiving a higher operating return on asset. A higher return on the company's asset will always result in a higher return on equity and vice versa.
Assalamualaikum, my name is Aisyah binti Muhammad Rahani. So now I will make a simple explanation on risk and success factor of IJM Corporation. There are 4 risks faced by this firm, which is in terms of inadequate employee, natural risk, commodities, and climate change. Hence, to overcome this matter, the firm firstly generate proactive steps to attract more trained labor. Next, they create a crisis management plan and keep a close eye on commodity price to solve natural and commodities risks respectively. Last but not least, crop the productivity that may be harmed by the prolonged dry weather.
Risk and success factor in SDP, SIMEDARBY Plantation. First, unfavorable weather and low productivity. Indonesia has faced last year's prolonged drought that affected the disruption to harvesting operation from more La Nina condition. Besides, this factor also affects CPO extraction rate (OER) in Indonesia that makes irregular and uniform oil palm harvesting take place at SDP. Second, shortage of labor. This is because of fact harvesting intervals, crop quality and crop recovery, so that SDP has taken fast action by opening a requirement of new employees in 2020. Besides, they also opened new requirement in 2021 and hired 2,541 new employees. Success factor. First, many new young areas coming into prime production. This has shown in FFB production improvement from 2% in 2019 to 5% in 2020. This is because there are many new young areas coming into prime production, so that this is one of the factors in the development of agriculture in Malaysia. Second, the factor of average age of oil palm. This is important so that SDP takes swift action by performing replanting programs that are able to cover the average age. This increasing statistic of average age show the positive impact on palm oil production.
This is a projection of Woods Company first in terms of liquidity. IJM Land has less liquidity than SIMEDARBY and moderate probability of going bankrupt because of insufficient cash or cash equivalents to meet its short-term financial obligation and continue to operate. Next is efficiency. Company's capacity to successfully use assets and manage liabilities in the current period or in the short term is ordinary. For leverage, both companies' ability to pay off its liabilities with its asset is quite acceptable. This shows there is a possibility many assets the company must sell in order to pay off all of its liabilities. And lastly is profitability. Both firm is underperforming in terms of revenue, profit, and cash flow management. The firm seems unable to effectively utilize its asset in order to generate profit and value for its owners. Next is recommendation for both company. First is they should try paying off liabilities and assessing overhead costs. Second, they need to enhance its leverage ratio, for example, by increasing sales revenue. Other than that, they should reduce costs and raise the firm income to increase its efficiency. Finally, they need to analyze the spending of assets and focusing on improving return on asset.